Let's talk about Reno Jackson in the Tombs of Terror.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
That's right, Reno is going to be the first playable hero in the Tombs of Terror, which means you might want to be familiar with his hero powers and some of his signature treasures if you're looking for a quick and easy run through the first wing of the Tombs of Terror, the Lost City. And thankfully, those have already been data mined from our friends over at outof.cards, my favorite new Hearthstone community site, which means we can walk through each of these, talking through which ones look like they're gonna be the strongest. That said, let's run through Reno's hero powers first. The weakest of Reno's hero power in my mind, and one you may never really end up playing unless you just want to do it for the sake of completing it, is Relicologist, a 0 mana hero power that gives your next spell this turn spell damage +2, which might be amazing in something like Constructed Hearthstone, but the problem with a card like this one in the Tombs of Terror is going to be the fact that you don't always really have a spell that you're going to want to play, and it may not even really benefit from spell damage. So, although you can construct your deck in a way to increase the likelihood of finding spells for a hero power like this one, and then you get this nice free bonus, sometimes that's a little bit restrictive because just, certain treasures or certain offerings lead you more down a minion path. That's a more likely outcome. So sometimes you'd have a dead hero power, which can be really problematic, when other times the hero powers offer a lot of value. So just because of this one's restrictiveness and liability when building your deck, I don't think it's going to work very well. So moving on to my second favorite hero power here for Reno, it's the base hero power, Amateur Mage, which deals 1 damage by default, so basically the Mage hero power in Hearthstone, but if you combo it, which means you play a card before utilizing it, it's going to deal 2 damage instead, so it can be a nice upgraded ping, maybe even some face damage in a pinch. And yeah, this is fine when it comes to hero powers. It's reliable, unlike our previous one. Combos not hard to activate, particularly later in a game, and there are going to be a lot of late game scenarios in the Tombs of Terror with the Plague Lord bosses, which have 300 health. That means games are going to be lasting for a little while. So consistency, reliability is very good for something like this, and 2 damage over time does add up. So all in all, it's not shiny, it's not super exciting, but it just does something you like. And then finally, my top hero power here is Arcane Craftiness, that fires 2 missiles that deal 1 damage each, so kind of like a baby arcane missiles, and if any minions die when that happens, you repeat the hero power. And that's fantastic against things like enemy tokens. There are apparently going to be a lot of Murlocs in the first wing, so I think this is the sort of hero power that's going to reliably go off maybe 2 to 3 times per turn. Even if it goes off once, you're still getting quite a bit of damage out of it potentially. Now, if it goes off twice, this is really amazing. 3-4 times, it could be incredible. And the more 1/1s your opponent has, the better. And you could even sometimes draft cards that give your opponent 1/1s, like a Leroy Jenkins, for instance. So some pretty interesting ideas for utilizing this one. And it's the sort of thing that can snowball into some big advantages over time. It is perhaps a little less predictable than our previous one, but I think the upside makes up for that deficit. So now let's move on to Reno's signature treasures, and there are 6 of these. They do have to be unlocked, so you may not always have a choice, but once you've got them all unlocked, these are going to be my favorites. Starting off with the weakest of the bunch, it's the Junior Tomb Diver, 4 mana 5/5, which seems pretty good off the bat, right? And the battle cry reads, if you've played 6 secrets this game, your hero power becomes Discover a Treasure, which that's an amazing hero power. The problem here is just how difficult it is to get 6 secrets down in a game and an adventure run like Tombs of Terror. It's really, really tough. That's a ton of mana. Even if you do go for a full secret package, it's going to be tough, particularly with a dual class hero, which you'll find in Tombs of Terror. You're going to have rogue and mage cards, not just mage cards. And although there are technically rogue secrets, there sure aren't a bunch, and I don't even know they're offered all that often. So it's going to be tough finding enough secrets to get this to go off, which means it's usually just going to be a 4 mana 5/5, which that's fine, but most of the time there are better options when it comes to signature treasures. Now, keep in mind, We are going to talk about an upgraded version of this card later, and I'll talk about that when we get there. So next up, let's take a look at Reno's Lucky Hat. This is the default signature treasure, and it's a really nice little 1-mana spell. Big time buff for 1 mana as a +2/+2, and the spell damage bonus here can make some early swings with, things like backstabs, and early tempo cards can really help flip a board in your favor in the early to mid game. So this is a nice treasure, as all treasures are, right? They're all strong cards. It's just got to compete against some really strong stuff to rank higher on this list. And the problem with a card like this is it just doesn't scale very well. It's not doing anything enormous or humongous in the late game. It's nice to get an early advantage, but most of the time in things like Tombs of Terror, winning the board in the first few turns isn't an enormous task. It's those kind of mid to late game turns where you really have to start doing oppressively powerful things to succeed, and Reno's Lucky Hat just doesn't have that much upside in my mind. So moving on here to Lay Flamepaw. This is a 2-mana 2/6, which reads, after you cast a spell, cast it again on the same target. So you can imagine some spells here are pretty good, right? Like fireballs, for instance, suddenly do 12 damage instead of 6. Others might be okay, things like Flame Strike, for instance. Some wouldn't matter at all, like Polymorph. You don't want to polymorph a minion twice. That's not particularly advantageous, but the good news is this works time and time again. If it lives on board, you get to use it multiple times. You could use it multiple times in a single turn. So there's a lot of upside in a card like this. It is susceptible to the fact that it will eventually die and you lose it, but there's probably enough power output for something like this that it works anyway. It's just worth it in a lot of cases. Not to mention it's just a 2-mana 2/6, which is a really solid body to get out on board, and it probably lives in those scenarios. So an interesting card to build on, has some scalability, some strong raw stats, some mana efficiency. Those are all very good attributes. Moving on to my third best signature treasure here, we've got Reno's Crafty Lasso, a 2-mana 3/2 weapon that reads, after your hero attacks, steal a card from your opponent's hand. So a couple cool things happening here, right? The classic Fiery War Axe pre-nerf stat line here, which we know is just magnificent at controlling early game boards. So you get some powerful tempo out of this card. But beyond that, you also generate some resources, and often some really nice resources, because sometimes the opposing bosses will be running OP cards, and you can steal their OP cards. Even if you don't, you are still just stealing resources from their hand, which can limit their flexibility. They might miss a turn because they don't have an on-curve play. So there are some real upsides to this hero power from a resource swap, but also just a disruption sort of thing. So although this one doesn't do, 10 different things, it has a couple really powerful swings. And sometimes that might be all you need to take that early to mid-game advantage. Is this going to be great at killing Plague Lords? Probably not if you're going for a really late run or a heroic style run, but if you just need to get to a Plague Lord, chip its health down a little bit, Reno's Crafty Lasso will probably help you do that a little bit quicker and more efficiently. So now moving on to my second best treasure, it's Reno's Magical Torch, a 2-mana spell that has tons of scalability. Super cool card. It deals 4 damage by default, so that's already pretty good. 2-mana deal 4 is awesome. And then it has a combo as a rogue card. Shuffle a copy of this card into your deck that deals 2 more damage. So you get another Reno's Magical Torch that deals 6 damage instead of 4. And then presumably that retains the combo, that if you combo it again, you shuffle it and it deals 8. So you get this infinite resource, and every time you draw it, it becomes better and better, and it's already a good card. All you have to do is combo it, which when it only costs 2 mana, shouldn't be particularly difficult. Now, the one downside for a card like this is the bigger your deck gets, which happens over time in a dungeon run style like this, then it's harder and harder to draw a card, but there are certainly ways to change that based on certain things like Bartender Bob adjustments and just moving things around in your deck, deleting cards, putting this in your opening hand. There are ways to fix that and empower your Reno's Magical Torch even more. So whether you're using this just to clear minions or maybe just slam your opponent in the face for tons of damage, there are a handful of ways this can be successful. And because it has that really powerful infinite scalability, I think this card is going to be really, really strong. So now let's take a look at the Gatling Wand, a 5-mana signature treasure spell. Deal 3 damage, split randomly among all enemies, and that improves for each spell you've cast this game. So the Gatling Wand becomes a really nice way to clear the opposing board, or potentially even just do a ton of damage. This does say all enemies, so if the opposing board's empty, you could just hit your opponent in the face for lots and lots of damage. And, 3 at the base here is not strong, but if you've cast like 10 spells, for instance, 13 starts to look really good. That's like way better than an Avenging Wrath already, which is an okay card. If you get to like 15 or 20 spells, the Gatling Wand is really, really absurd. So it depends on how you build your deck. If you get enough cheap spells, cycle spells, the Gatling Wand could be incredible. If you end up with lots and lots of minions, this card's only going to be mediocre. And I think that's the reason I can't rank it any higher on this list. I'm sure it will be better in some wings of the dungeon than in others. Say, for instance, if the first one really does have a ton of Murlocs on the enemy side of the board, as we think it might based on the twist for it, which is called Murlocs Everywhere, then the Gatling Wand would probably be like your best option, because you're going to be concerned with clearing the enemy board all the time, and you won't care as much about other kinds of late game value. You're just going to be desperate to remove stuff. So maybe like on wing 1 it's amazing, maybe on like wing 3 or 4 it's not really all that good. It kind of just depends. And although that's true for all of these treasures, they clearly rise and fall depending on the needs of the wing. We're speaking generally here, and generally speaking, I think this one's a little bit weaker because you probably won't be quite so reliant on removing your opponent's board as you are going to be trying to enact your own proactive game plan or do lots of damage, for instance, to the enemy face, and only in some cases is Gatling Wand going to support those goals. So the lack of consistency, the occasional awkwardness probably means this won't be your best pick on average. And then finally here, the top signature treasure. This is the Senior Tomb Diver, and this card will be available when you complete all 4 wings of the Tombs of Terror, which will not be available immediately, so this will come weeks down the line. You will upgrade your Junior Tomb Diver to your Senior Tomb Diver, and it has the base cost and the same mechanic, but the numbers have been tweaked. It goes to a 7/7, which is a great stat line for 4 mana. It's an amazing stat line, a meme stat line even. And the secret requirement goes down to 3, cuts in half, which is a big change. Suddenly getting 3 secrets isn't so insane. It's still not going to be easy, but it's not absolutely crazy. And then this battle cry means this thing goes just nuts. Discovering a treasure is absurdly powerful. Like, that's going to just make decks do completely bonkers broken things and enable you to dominate Plague Lords, which is going to be important because they have 300 health. So a hero power like this one that takes a little bit but scales like crazy is probably exactly what you need for Tombs of Terror, which is why I'm really banking on this one, even though I think it still has some consistency issues, because even 3 secrets takes a little bit of mana and a little bit of work. I think the payoff is going to be so long-lasting and so significant with Senior Tomb Diver that it will absolutely be worth it for Tombs of Terror. Maybe not for some previous dungeon runs, but for this one, this makes way too much sense. And there you go. Those are my rankings for the Tombs of Terror, Reno Jackson, hero powers, and signature treasures. Hopefully that'll give you a little bit of guidance as you dive into the Tombs of Terror, have some idea what to pick. Now, in some cases, you're going to have to unlock these. You won't really have a whole lot of choices. You're going to have to kind of go with the basic stuff. But for replayability, for future runs, for other wings, you've got some ideas here for which things are probably going to be most powerful on average. That said, if you disagree, you think I'm crazy, and for some reason you got some different ideas, share those in the comments below. Don't just listen to me. Go read the comments. Make a judgment based on all the different data you can gather, and then use that to make your decisions. That said, I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. I want to thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, game on.